Why do the most powerful men fall not on the battlefield, but in the bedroom? Why do kings lose kingdoms not to their enemies, but to a kiss, a whisper, a seduction? Today we solve a problem most men never even see: how the ignorance of feminine power leads to their downfall. And why Machiavelli warned us centuries ago. What if I told you that the greatest miscalculation a man can make is not in war, not in diplomacy, not even in betrayal, but in love? Men have always looked upon women with rose-colored eyes, adoration, worship, even desperation. But Machiavelli saw something different. Not a goddess, not a prize, not a delicate flower to protect. He saw something far more dangerous, a political force, one that does not require a throne to rule, one that moves silently, invisibly, behind the scenes, yet can collapse empires with a whisper. You see, in The Prince, Machiavelli didn't speak of love in the romantic way poets do. He spoke of it as a strategic liability, a territory to be governed, not lost in. And when it came to women, his silence was not ignorance. It was a calculation. Because where most men see beauty, he saw leverage. Where most men saw innocence, he saw ambition. Where most men got distracted, he sharpened his focus. Throughout history, women have ruled without ruling. They wore no crown, yet held dominion over kings. Helen of Troy launched 1,000 ships, not because she wielded a sword, but because she commanded desire. Cleopatra seduced empires. Catherine de' Medici played chess with blood and marriages alike. These women didn't need armies, they were armies. Machiavelli understood this quiet power, that a woman could act as an emissary of influence, that she could place herself beside a weak man, become his muse, then his master, and the man, blind with lust or flattery, would call it love. But it was politics. He warned that love, especially from a powerful woman, is rarely pure. It is strategic, calculated. Men fall because they assume women enter the arena of power to be protected. But in truth, they enter to win. And the man who sees her as just a lover forgets she's also a player, and a dangerous one. Watch carefully. Not all battles are fought with blades. Not all assassinations leave blood. Some are fought in bedrooms, some in whispers behind closed doors. And the man who thinks himself in control, simply because he is loved, is the easiest to control. Machiavelli's philosophy is clear. Power respects nothing but power. And in the realm of court intrigue, charm is often just camouflage. A woman who understands her influence will use it, and if the man does not understand the nature of her play, he will become her pawn. Men today are no different from princes of old. They still seek peace in the wrong places. They lay down their weapons when touched by affection. They give up their strategies when comfort is offered. They confuse validation for virtue, attention for loyalty, and in doing so, they surrender power without a fight. You must understand, this is not about misogyny. It's not about demonizing women. No, it's about acknowledging what Machiavelli knew long before the modern man ever opened a dating app. Women are political agents in their own right. To treat them as mere emotional companions is to deny the full extent of their capacity, and to underestimate someone's capacity is to grant them power over you. A fool trusts blindly, a prince never. Even her silence has meaning, her smile is a weapon, her tears strategy, her touch a contract. She is playing a game that men refuse to believe exists, because to admit it would be to confront their own vulnerability. And when Machiavelli wrote of human nature, he wrote of its selfishness, its thirst for survival, its hunger for advantage. Do you truly believe women are exempt from this? No. They are simply more elegant in its expression, more subtle, more effective. The modern man suffers because he does not see this. He views affection as truth. He believes in fairy tales. He romanticizes surrender. He forgets that power, real power, is neither loud nor violent. It is quiet. It is graceful. It wears perfume, not armor. Men do not fall because of women. They fall because they idolize them. There is a difference between seeing someone and worshipping them, between being in love and being consumed. Machiavelli knew this difference. He saw what most men were too afraid to admit, that the moment a man puts a woman on a pedestal, he lowers himself beneath her. And no man rules from his knees. We live in a world where men are taught that their highest virtue is to adore, to protect, to prove themselves, that the more they give, the more worthy they become. But Machiavelli would laugh at such weakness, because the man who must prove himself is already at a disadvantage. The man who must earn her gaze has already surrendered his throne. To idealize a woman is to blind yourself. You stop seeing her as she is and begin seeing her as you want her to be. She becomes flawless, pure, a salvation, a light in your darkness. But here's the truth: no one is flawless, no one is pure, and no one exists solely to complete you. Machiavelli understood that illusions are dangerous, not because they lie, but because they comfort, and men crave comfort far more than truth, especially in love, especially when desire burns, especially when emptiness whispers that maybe, just maybe, she will fill what power could not. But power does not beg. It does not chase. It does not kneel before an image crafted by fantasy. And yet, look at the modern man. Look at him scrolling, liking, dreaming, hoping. He doesn't want a partner. He wants a savior in lipstick. And in doing so, he forgets the oldest law of nature: what you worship controls you. This is the danger. Not the woman herself, but what you project onto her. You give her your ambition. You give her your strength. You give her the authority to define your worth. She doesn't take your crown. You place it in her hands. And what happens when she walks away? You crumble. Because it was never about her. It was about what you believed she meant. And when the illusion disappears, you're left with nothing but the void you tried to cover with her attention. Machiavelli knew the cost of illusion. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But in the matters of love, men often seek to be loved only, at the expense of their own sovereignty. They forget that love is not pure. It is not selfless. It is not fair. It is human, which means it is flawed, which means it is political. When you idealize a woman, you ignore the part of her that is capable of cruelty, of ambition, of self-interest. You blind yourself to her power, not out of respect, but out of denial. And no prince who denies reality can keep his throne. He thinks she will be different. He thinks she will never hurt him. He believes she is the exception. But belief is not knowledge, and hope is not a strategy. Machiavelli believed in evidence, in nature, in patterns. And the pattern is clear: the man who idealizes a woman places himself in chains and calls it devotion. What begins as admiration turns into dependency. And dependency, in Machiavellian terms, is the enemy of power. If you need her validation, you are no longer a sovereign. If you change your decisions to please her, you are no longer a leader. If your moods rise and fall based on her affection, you are no longer a man of state. You are a slave of emotion. This is how empires fall, not with gunpowder, not with rebellion, but with the soft corrosion of a man who forgot himself. A man who placed her above truth. A man who confused his own weakness for love. A man who called his infatuation loyalty and mistook his obsession for purpose. Because once you idealize her, you will excuse everything. You will ignore every red flag. You will surrender every principle. And you will do it proudly, convinced that your suffering proves your worth. Power is not divided by gender. It is divided by perception. And perception is a weapon. Machiavelli did not write fairy tales. He wrote warnings. He did not stroke egos, he exposed them. And when it came to the war between men and women, he understood what most still refuse to face, that beneath every relationship lies a negotiation, a struggle, a shifting battlefield where one either leads or is led. Modern men, poisoned by delusions of romance, often walk blindly into that battlefield. They carry no sword, no shield, only compliments, apologies, and the desperate hope of being chosen. They forget what Machiavelli knew deeply. Those who hold power rarely ask for it. They simply assume it. The greatest power a woman has is not physical force. It is not even manipulation in the common sense. It is the ability to command male attention without demanding it, to influence without raising her voice, to make a man question his strength voluntarily. Machiavelli would say, this is not evil. This is not sinister. This is natural. And nature doesn't care how men feel about it. It rewards the sharp, the strategy, the adaptable. You see, men fight for control with swords. Women often fight with silence, distance, or allure. Both are instruments of power. But the tragedy. Most men don't even know there's a game being played. They still believe in balance where there is only leverage. They believe in equality where there is only advantage. One moment his, the next hers. Machiavelli never said that men should dominate women. That would be foolish. What he taught is far more subtle. He warned, never allow yourself to become subject to any person's power unknowingly. And yet, modern men submit without realizing it, not because they are weak, but because they are naive. When a man fears losing her more than she fears losing him, the scales tip. When a man changes his path to avoid upsetting her, the throne begins to crack. When a man's identity is woven into her approval, he no longer belongs to himself. That is the dynamic few are willing to admit. In public, they call it partnership. In private, they feel the chains of performance. One plays king, but lives like a servant. She sets the tone. She controls the intimacy. She holds the keys to peace or chaos in his emotional kingdom. Machiavelli taught that rulers must be feared rather than loved, if they cannot be both. Yet what do we see today? Men obsessed with being loved, with being agreeable, with pleasing at all costs. The modern man fears disapproval more than dishonor. He has been trained to think that his value is tied to her comfort, her happiness, her smile. But power is not given to the one who gives the most. Power bends toward the one who can walk away. And here's the critical point: power between men and women has become emotional, not rational. Men used to seek land, conquest, and legacy. Now, they seek permission to feel worthy. They are taught that masculinity is dangerous unless it's softened, censored, or shamed. So what happens? He gives her the throne, not through force, not through rebellion, but through surrender disguised as virtue, through silence dressed as empathy, through sacrifice that nobody asked for. Machiavelli would laugh, not because he hated women, but because he hated illusions. He knew that any system of power must be based on reality, not hope. And the reality is this: a woman who sees that she can control a man emotionally will, consciously or not, test the limits of that control. Not because she is cruel, because she is human. Power unused becomes boring. Power unchallenged becomes invisible. And so the man begins to shrink, not in body, but in presence. His spine bends slowly, his voice softens, his decisions become hesitant. He checks her expression before he speaks. He asks, "Is this okay?" before he acts. He becomes a boy wearing a man's face. The Machiavellian prince would never live this way. He does not beg to be chosen. He chooses. He does not fear withdrawal. He withdraws. He does not negotiate with uncertainty. He clarifies it or cuts it off. Because power is not kind. It is not patient. It is not forgiving to those who hesitate. And here lies the ultimate reversal. The more power he surrenders, the less attractive he becomes, not just to her, but to the world. For what is a man who has no center, who bends to every mood, who exists only to please? He is not loved. He is pitied, or worse, ignored. Machiavelli knew this dynamic was not new. It existed in Rome, in Florence, in every royal court. The man who chased approval was always the one who fell first. The one who waited for permission was always the one who lost command. Power between the sexes has always been a dance of strategy. One leads, one follows. But in today's world, the men no longer lead, and few know they're even in a dance at all. The greatest threat to a man's power has never been brute force. It's the illusion that he still holds it long after it's been taken. This is the curse of the modern man. He is trained to see everything except what is quietly working against him. He prepares for war in the boardroom, on the battlefield, in politics, yet fails to recognize the battleground in his own home, his relationships, his mind. And the enemy is not a woman. It is his refusal to acknowledge that women, like all people, play to win. Machiavelli warned rulers to expect cunning, to study it, to anticipate it. Yet when it comes to women, modern men throw away the playbook. They think love has no politics. They think kindness guarantees loyalty. They think if they just give enough, love enough, forgive enough, they will be safe from betrayal, disrespect, abandonment. But they won't be. Not because women are cruel, but because men ignore the most basic truth Machiavelli knew. Everyone has an interest, everyone plays a role, and everyone manipulates. Some overtly, some silently, but always for survival or advantage. Modern men, raised on fantasies of equality without friction, now enter relationships completely unarmed. They believe that female behavior is innocent until proven guilty. They romanticize female intentions. They assume nurturing means submission, and that silence means agreement. And in doing so, they leave themselves exposed, not to knives or poison, but to something far more effective: emotional strategy. Let us not forget, the one who appears less powerful often learns to control by invisibility. Just as a fox survives by not showing its teeth until the kill is assured, a woman who understands her value will not demand control. She will inspire it. She will guide a man's decisions not through force, but by implication. She will win battles without raising her voice, while he congratulates himself for leading. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He wrote of the lion and the fox, not as enemies, but as necessary allies in the art of survival. The lion relies on strength. The fox survives through intelligence, subtlety, and misdirection. The lion thinks in force, the fox in perception. And what modern men forget is that most women have mastered the fox, while men still believe strength alone will protect them. But strength without foresight is vulnerability. It is a shield with no eyes. Modern man's blind spot is fatal because it is built on a moral illusion that if he is good, he will not be hurt, that if he provides, he will be respected, that if he is honest, he will be cherished. Machiavelli would sneer at this fantasy, not because virtue is useless, but because virtue without realism is suicide. Consider this: in a world where women are encouraged to leverage beauty, emotion, and status, what incentive does she have to play fairly if a man cannot even recognize when the game is being played? A woman knows her value not through what she says, but through how men respond. If a man gives everything without testing her loyalty, he teaches her that loyalty isn't required. If he overlooks red flags in the name of understanding, he teaches her that consequences don't exist. And when there are no consequences, there is no respect. Respect, Machiavelli taught, is built through clarity of role, discipline, and control. Love without power invites mockery. A ruler who cannot say no will soon be ruled. A man who cannot walk away from manipulation teaches others to manipulate him. But the modern man has been told that setting boundaries is toxic, that asserting himself is aggression, that female unhappiness is his failure. He lives as a hostage to her emotions, mistaking obedience for love. The modern man has become easy to manage, not because he lacks power, but because he refuses to use it. He chooses comfort over confrontation. He chooses validation over vision. He chooses peace over self-respect. And in doing so, he opens the door for someone else to define his worth. Women are not the enemy. Machiavelli would never suggest that. But ignorance is. And in today's world, male ignorance of female strategy is a self-inflicted wound. Men no longer study behavior, they study feelings. They no longer seek to understand incentives, they seek to appease them. They no longer lead, they perform. He does not observe her patterns. He does not test her loyalty. He does not watch for shifts in tone, attention, or behavior. He simply trusts blindly, hopelessly, desperately. And this desperation makes him predictable. Predictability, in politics and in love, is always punished. Because when you are predictable, you are easy to control. When you are easy to control, you are disposable. Machiavelli understood something brutal but real. Those who do not manage perception are managed by it. And today's man, so desperate to be the nice guy, the safe man, the understanding partner, has become invisible to women who crave certainty, command, and charisma. He becomes the maybe, the backup, the one she keeps around when the others fail, not out of malice, but out of his own failure to demand more. Because here is the paradox: the more he chases her validation, the less she gives it. The more he tries to prove his love, the more she questions it. The more he fears losing her, the more she tests whether he's worth keeping. And with each test he fails, she grows colder, more calculating, while he grows softer, more lost. You were never taught to watch. You were taught to serve. But in every palace, there are those who serve and those who rule. And those who cannot see the game are always the first to lose it. Men were warned, not by bitter men, not by broken hearts, but by history's coldest observer of power. Machiavelli. He did not despise women, he understood them. And more importantly, he understood how blind men become when they refuse to see the nature of the game they are playing. This is not a sermon on hatred. This is not an invitation to war between the sexes. It is a wake-up call. A call for men to stop hoping that love will save them from betrayal, to stop believing that submission earns respect, to stop pretending that virtue without strength has value in a world ruled by power, perception, and positioning. Machiavelli knew, if you do not understand the motives of those closest to you, you will be ruled by them. He warned rulers to fear the fox as much as the lion. He warned men to be alert where charm meets strategy. And yet, today's man has silenced that warning under the noise of comfort, lust, and self-deception. He has traded his crown for approval, his judgment for affection, his instincts for ideology, and now he wonders why he is not respected. Why is he left? Why is he used? Machiavelli's message echoes through time, not as cruelty, but as clarity. Power is not evil. Blindness is. So ask yourself, are you a man playing the game, or the fool being played? Because the fox is still out there, smiling sweetly, and her silence does not mean peace. It means she already knows how this ends. It is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both, and it is fatal to trust blindly in either.